So for today, we're going to talk about using geospatial AI to de-risk investments, select sites and value assets, and identify expansion opportunities, those early signals, and have actionable insights to have that competitive advantage, right? Awesome. Thank you all for joining. So really excited to get started. We'll go ahead and introduce our fantastic panel of experts. I'll kick it off. My name is Eva. I'm a customer success engineer here at CARTO. I've been at the CARTO team for 4 years now and been doing geospatial analysis for 10 years. I came from a more traditional GIS background in training and really loved the direction and vision CARTO was taking with modern tools and with cloud capabilities and really unlocking a lot of power and insights for business decisions. So really excited to be part of the team. I have an account. I handle a portfolio of diverse accounts across insurance, real estate, retail, and I get to see a lot of challenges that teams are facing in terms of getting actual insights. So really excited to talk about this today, especially with the evolving AI landscape, and really hope you can take away some ideas and ways to integrate some of these tools and resources and ideas into your work. So I'll go ahead and pass it to Anand to introduce himself as well.
Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Anand Singh. I am a VP of Product at Cotality within the data solution business. I lead all things geospatial and location intelligence, as well as implementing some of the generative AI property insights within our portfolio as well. For those of you who have not heard the word Cotality, we were formerly known as CoreLogic. That I'm assuming a lot of you are aware of, but over the last couple of years, we have gone through a major transformation in reshaping ourselves in how do we deal with the real estate data, the property and location data in totality, and how do we serve multiple markets at the end of the day. And the name change from CoreLogic to Cotality has been a significant part of that journey as well. Good to be here.
Fantastic. And my name is Sully McConnell. Snowflake a few years ago started to bring in people with industry expertise. So I am that person at Snowflake for insurance. I work with many of our large customers globally on their data and analytics needs and making sure they're getting the most value out of Snowflake. And I work with our partners in the ecosystem, like CARTO, like Cotality, who are building interesting horizontal and insurance vertical applications inside of Snowflake, and you're surely going to see a fantastic example of that later today. But I came from industry, so I for a long time I've led data and analytics organizations inside some of the large carriers. Most notably, I was CDO at the Hartford and led the Travelers data and analytics function. So lots of experience building these kinds of applications, but very excited to be here at Snowflake. Obviously, at this point in time, with everything happening with Gen AI, it's just a fantastic time to be in the space. Very, very happy to be here.
Yeah, fantastic. So both to have you both here, part of the conversation today. And I think for the audience, if we'd love to learn more about you while I go through what we're going to talk about today, would love to hear some things that are top of mind for you. What drew you to this webinar? What do you want to learn about? And then we can definitely reference that and make sure we get to it, especially towards the end, we'll have Q&A. So yeah, go ahead, put in the chat things that you want to learn, walk away with. In the meantime, I'll talk through. So just like what Anand and Sully touched about, we're going to bring our perspectives and talk about the situation today, and also some of the challenges we see from different points of view in the industry, right? Working with different customers, different teams, what we're hearing, what we're seeing, and also talking through some of the vision and solutions and ways to leverage geospatial AI to make these decisions in terms of identifying these risks early, and then also identifying opportunity and expansion opportunities early as well. So that'll be a really exciting conversation. And then the fun part, we'll get to see it in action. What does that look like in practice? How do these tools and the data cloud and forward-leaning data, what does that look like, and what kind of business insights could you get early on to make these impactful decisions and actual insights? And of course, we'll have time for Q&A as well. So if you do have questions, feel free to put your questions in the chat. We'll definitely revisit them during that section. Fantastic. So digging into it, right? It's no secret. You guys are probably feeling it too. We see our customers and hear from our customers that making property investment decisions are incredibly risky, very complicated, especially with the evolving landscape, evolving changes, and having manual or fragmented data and processes doesn't make it any easier and can really slow things down and can be missed opportunity. There could be missed opportunities there, right? In terms of identifying those early signals and identifying those risks and opportunities early on. And there's definitely research back from organizations and companies like Forrester that do show that companies that are more data driven are more likely to reach their revenue goals. So that's great. But definitely within the past year, with the AI landscape coming in, just having the data itself and being data driven isn't enough. And we're definitely seeing that from our customers. I think it's definitely coming from the need to have those actual insights, those forecast models, the tailored models to your business environment in your context with your first party data and also the context of third party data, and to be able to have that insight. So the data is one piece, and of course having the tools and capabilities to do that is important, but definitely identifying those early signals and having the actual insights is definitely a key differentiator in terms of competitive advantage and providing faster response times, better customer experience, finding those opportunities early. Maybe your telco laying down fiber, finding those locations before construction hits, and being able to make those decisions and act upon them. So in terms of some of the challenges we see in here, I'll definitely hand it over first to Cotality. I'll hand it over to Anand to speak to, from his perspective, what he's really seeing as some challenges in the space.
Thanks, Eva. And as Eva pointed out, Cotality, we are a property and location data and analytics company. So as we think about different challenges that the clients go through across different markets, it really comes down to a few key items. Number one, outdated property intelligence. We see a number of companies operating on data that's outdated, that's not up to date, and trying to make decisions on top of that, or even dealing with the idea of I may have too much of data. Some of the data might be my own, some of the data I may have acquired from different vendors, but I'm not really sure in how do I want to bring it all together. Now, there are obviously organizations that are highly data driven, but if you are uncertain about how to get from those data to actual actionable insights, you may be left behind compared to where your competition may be at, which gives you the competitive disadvantage. And then last but not the least, even if you had the data, even if you were able to put it all together for actionable insights, what truly matters in the world of AI is how prescriptive it is going to be. So it's not just based on what has happened in the past, but how do you glean on those insights to help you dictate what's going to happen in the future? So we all can make those strategic decisions, whether it's about where to invest the capital, where to put up new stores, where to install fiber, where to think about new investments that we are going to make. So it's not just about what has happened in the past and the insights thereof, but also how do we use those insights for prescribing our investments in the future. And put it all together, it's the right kind of data, the right insights, the right AI that allow us to produce the early signals of where the market change is going to happen to drive those strategic decisions in the future as well. Eva, back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's super, super interesting insights from your point of view. And I think related to having access to data and those models, some of the challenges that I've heard from customers too is definitely the steep learning curve with learning these tools, right? A lot of ML models, a lot of AI capabilities are coming out, and folks that maybe have more of a traditional business or data analyst background, and if they're given a developer tool interface, that's a huge steep learning curve, and that doesn't really help with adoption and integration of AI within your teams and your organization. And it also can produce more inefficiencies if you're using older tools that maybe, there's these missed opportunities here. So definitely, I think that skill, that gap in terms of leveraging existing resources, but then giving a path for people of different skill sets to learn and grow. From speaking from my own experience, from a traditional GIS background, I was using more point and click tools, and so definitely being a part of CARTO and being part of this ecosystem, having different tools to learn SQL and onboard SQL in a user-friendly way, I think has been really empowering, and also really allowed me to professionally grow really quickly. So I think there's definitely some challenges around that piece of new tools, integrating that modernization to organizations, having various diverse skill sets be able to use that tool. And then also to the challenge around actionable insights. You could create a map, could look pretty, but is it really moving the needle, and is it really allowing decisions to take place and to be integrated within the process? And then also having geospatial part of those business conversations and decisions, right? Integrated in the whole of the reporting in the company and the team. And sometimes those challenges can be really real, where sometimes that location insights or that location intelligence might not make it into those final decisions. So that's from my side. I'll pass over you, Sully, from your point of view.
Sure. I would say, as you look across the insurance ecosystem broadly, we're at a point where everyone is committed to this idea of competing on data and analytics at this point. It's at the very least table stakes now. That wasn't always true, but I think most organizations would say they recognize the need for it to be a competitive differentiator for them to be successful in the market. And so that's led to these, large modernization, data modernization initiatives, I'll say across the ecosystem. And organizations are coming from challenging environments. Most are coming from environments which, there were lots of redundant data and lots of redundant, let's say, data pipelines, all for very good reasons. So they're coming from these very siloed data environments. I think many organizations would say, for again, lots of good reasons, given some of the constraints of on-premise legacy systems. There were challenges with how fresh the data was to, help with particular business problems. So as organizations modernize and move to the cloud, like they're trying to get fresher data for a class of business problems, I think that's certainly a challenge. I think we all appreciate, and this is new, right? In the last 12 months, 18 months, what's happened with Gen AI is every organization is taking a step back and saying, unstructured data really needs to be part of my holistic data strategy in the enterprise. That wasn't true 12 months ago, 18 months ago, but certainly is now because of all of the opportunity to take Gen AI and leverage unstructured data in a variety of analytics use cases in business processes. So that's new. And then I think another common problem that everyone is solving through many of these modernization initiatives is just challenges with speed to market and speed to insight, right? The processes that we have in place to deliver insights to a consumer, to a decision maker, they're just long and fraught with challenges. And so improving speed to market is really top of mind for most of the space.
Absolutely. And really excited to dig into also some of the solutions or some of the pathways you've seen with your customers that can help address some of these challenges. So I'll pass it back to you, Anand, to speak a bit more of how you're helping, customers with some of those challenges that you mentioned.
Sure, Eva. And before we jump into how do we go about solving the challenges that we all just spoke about, particularly for the early signals and how do we think about de-risking our investments or selecting sites, I thought we'll just take a moment to take a look back on what is Cotality and how do we go about thinking about solutions like these. So as I mentioned earlier, we are a property and location data and analytics company. And as we think about all the data that we have built in a very modern, state-of-the-art data supply chain, in how do we bring that together to be able to get to these kind of actionable insights by applying the right AI, the right ML, it comes down to when, for all the use cases, when folks think about how do I select sites, how do I de-risk my investment, how do I identify where markets are going to change, it's not just one or two factors. What goes into this thought process is usually tens or hundreds, if not thousands of different factors in how different markets think about the right signals, the right factors, the right insights that need to be brought together. So at Cotality, what we have done is we have curated what you see on the screen is something we call as Cotality Property 360. It's powered by our data supply chain. It's how we aggregate, acquire, bring it all together, generate the right level of insights, and stitch them together in this unified view for every single property, every parcel, every structure, every address in the United States and in many other countries as well. So if you look around the wheel, it's all things from location to entities, to who owns these properties and parcels, understanding the imagery, the inside and out of real estate properties, understanding deep structural characteristics from permits to construction quality, to understanding what's happening around the property, whether there is demographics, whether there's employment, crime, protection, things of that nature, different liens that apply to properties and structures, different kinds of valuations, not just the current market value of a property, but also in insurance terms, what's the reconstruction if something bad was to happen to a property, and all the way to understanding risks associated to properties and parcels as well. Those could be risks that immediately follow a weather event, or could be hazard risk, probabilistic models, or even climate risk as we portray those risks over a next 10, 20, 30 years from today. So all of these are just not exhaustive, but a sample things on different kinds of data and insights that we're all stitching together under this one umbrella that we call as Property 360. And for different use cases, and we're going to talk about the early signal and de-risking use case today in this webinar. But for different use cases, it's going to be around picking the right insights and right data points from the Property 360, putting it together in an AI to get to those actionable insights that we have been talking about. You'll also see some nuggets on the left bottom of the slide, just to give you the scale of how this data supply chain comes together. All of the Property 360, it's built around more than 157 million properties and parcels. Again, these are United States centric numbers only. I know we have folks joining the webinar that are international, so we could portray similar numbers in many other countries and markets that we operate in as well. But just in the US, you think about more than 157 million properties, close to 210 million addresses, 175 structures, bunch of natural hazards, spatial layers. In our partnership with Snowflake and Cotality, we generate more than 2 billion map tiles on a monthly basis. So you can imagine the scale at which this data supply chain is operating. More than a billion property imagery. We process close to 200,000 documents on a daily basis. This is where our AI takes place in our supply chain to understand different transactions that are happening on the property. So all comes together in the spin wheel. And then Eva, if we move on to the next slide, is a use case and how this gets put into action. Now, going back to the use case that we're talking about today, which is all about how do we select sites? How do we think about our investments? How do we de-risk those investments for the future? This is a sample workflow for the use case. And how do we go from data on the left, applying the AI in the middle, and enabling that use case for multiple industries on the right? So you saw the Property 360 pinwheel on the left. Now, as we step into the AI, we have experts that sit across multiple forums, whether it's deep data science, economists who understand the valuation and change in the market trends, hazard scientists, weather scientists, location scientists, climate scientists, and then obviously generative AI LLMs also empowering on working with the Property 360 data to create the next level insights, conversational agents, agentic workflows on top of it as well. What you see in the middle is again a sample workflow for this particular use case, but for many other use case, you could easily rinse and repeat different kinds of insights for other applications as well. Now, particularly as we think about identifying the future market changes, these are sample of different factors that we have seen getting applied in how it all comes together. So to name a few, think about parcel lineage is all about identifying changes that are happening to properties. This may be parcels getting splits or merged or redrawn or shifts that may be happening. Changes to land uses. So a parcel that was earlier identified as a cow pasture now suddenly is a commercial land. That may be a signal of a market that's going through a shift in the future. New construction sales, understanding weather and hazard risk. And I know Sully's going to talk more about it, but if I'm going to be in a business of selecting sites for the future, I may be investing into it, or I may be thinking about building a data center there for all you know. I do want to understand what risks may be posed to that particular site that I may be considering right now. So again, from weather to hazard to climate of the future, that goes into that early signals of understanding the market and how do I go about selecting the sites. Aerial imagery extraction, going from satellite imagery, aerial imagery to understand the changes. Same thing around trends and demographics as well. as new constructions start to take place, that's going to result in new population that's going to come in. That's going to result in demographics being changes on those areas as well. New properties coming about, new addresses, and how does that change my market dynamics? New building permits could be a signal of new constructions that are going to take place. Valuation changes in certain areas, acquisition of parcels by builders or developers, another signal of something that's going to happen in the future. And again, these are sample of features that get all pulled together, and you'll see a large part of this in action when we go into the demos. But you could really apply these factors into different kinds of models and different kind of use cases. Now, a retailer may use to understand where growth and early signals are there to identify new sites for new store locations, whereas a telecom may use it for understanding, hey, if there is going to be a change in the market and new construction activity, that may be a prime area for me to go in and install fiber lines in. Same thing applies to utility who may be looking to de-risk some of their new infrastructure that they're planning to expand. Data center, home builder site selection, insurers who care about de-risking the investments or the properties that are in their portfolio. So you could really see from data to insights to selecting the right factors to applying that use case across multiple markets. And again, you'll see that all in action as we go into some of the demos as well. Hopefully that paints a broader picture. Eva, I'll pass that back to you.
Yeah, this is fantastic. I love learning all that goes into the data and identifying those variables that can help make those actual insights. So yeah, thank you for sharing. I think this is fantastic. And certainly in terms from the CARTO piece, really excited in the coming months, weeks. We definitely have some new agentic AI capabilities coming to the product. So definitely stay tuned. There's more to come, but definitely the vision for CARTO as a platform is, I think one challenge I didn't really touch on earlier was taking first party and third party data sets, all these disparate data sets, and bringing them all in one place, which, can live in Snowflake, amazing data sets like Cotality, and maybe your own sites, current sites and assets and investments, and then also additional context data, and being able to bring that all together within that Snowflake environment and architecture and being able to ask business questions of it. So definitely CARTO is in the direction and vision of having native agentic capabilities, integrating your own ML models, your own AI capabilities, and also the fantastic work that Cotality has done within their insights to give you those variables that maybe can help forecast some of those signs, or will forecast those early signs. So essentially, definitely future-proofing and building resilient teams. So bringing those teams from different backgrounds and experiences, being able to have a tool that they could easily use. They could continue to use the Snowflake console interface. That's their technical level. They could use, drag and drop workflows to be able to plug and play and being able to do analysis that are repeatable and scalable for, one market to across nationwide in the US to even global analysis as well. So being able to have that scalability, but also to be able to keep up with that market changes and environmental hazard changes, and to be able to identify kind of what's happening within these different contexts. And then also with the ability to add additional geospatial capabilities. Snowflake offers a lot of really great native geospatial capabilities, and then CARTO is bringing additional functions and user-defined functions as well and procedures to be able to expand those use cases that are possible. Some of them could be, for example, creating trade areas within drive times, being able to do that within your Snowflake with your data, and to enrich that with variables in terms of population, demographics, mobility, traffic data, construction, early signs, and things like that throughout the life cycle. And being able to create actionable dashboards that are really easy to share, embed them into a website, embed them to other tools, share them via URL, and allow other users to be able to create insights with them and create decisions with them, and being able to just chat with the map and say, hey, I'm really curious, where's the best opportunity to open a store in this location, and being able to have behind the scenes your ML and your AI models connected to the back of it. So there's definitely more to come there in terms of those capabilities, but certainly wanting to ease that onboarding process to modern tools, to leveraging those capabilities within your team. I'll pass it to Sully to speak on the Snowflake perspective.
Sure. So I think there's the question of, well, how does Snowflake help with some of these, say, modernization and simplification initiatives, and how do we help our partners build AI-enabled products to bring to the consumer space? And so if you think about the Snowflake platform, which I guess has been about GA 10 plus years, the reason that I'll say I chose Snowflake in my last role, and many of my CDO peer group would choose Snowflake, is this idea that it is a platform that allows you for dramatic simplification of your data ecosystem. It's a platform that allows you to bring data into it once, but provide it to a number of consumer groups. So if claims or premium or customers are interesting to different functions in your organization, product, claim analytics, pricing, the actuarial group, the data science community, the marketing teams, but it would be, I'll say, typical in legacy environments to make copies of that data and quote unquote give it to different groups to consume. In Snowflake, there is this idea that it's one copy of data, and you can provide views of that to all of the consuming groups, both inside and potentially outside your organization, right? And that is true for both, by the way, structured data and unstructured data, right? We have the facility to store and manage and govern and secure one time all of your structured and unstructured data, but give views of that to any consuming group inside and outside of your Snowflake account. And when I say outside, right, the use case there may be obvious is you've got third-party data vendors like Cotality who have fantastic property intelligence. They can bring that property intelligence inside of Snowflake once, and they can share a view of that to hundreds of customers potentially across the Snowflake universe. And it's not a copy into your account. It is a lens, a view of that single copy of data. So it's as fresh as they make it. It's as up to date as they drive it on their side of the environment. And so that's a way to radically simplify data ecosystems inside organizations. That said, the idea of sharing things across Snowflake account boundaries is not limited to data. These application objects, if someone builds an application inside of Snowflake, that can also easily be shared across Snowflake account boundaries with a couple of clicks inside of the producer's Snowflake account. And so, right, you've got fantastic partners like CARTO who have remarkable geospatial capabilities. So they can provide a geospatial application shared across a Snowflake account boundary, and then you get fantastic partnerships like this, where you've got CARTO and Cotality saying, let's create a geospatial location intelligence application. That's an object inside of Snowflake that can be easily shared into your account. You can bring your exposures or your claims into that application and get fantastic insights. And so these are the kinds of things we're, I'll say, enabling for the ecosystem to build and share. And maybe just to finish that off, these quote unquote frontier models, all of the large language models that are interesting to the space, those from, OpenAI and Anthropic and Llama and Mistral, et cetera, like all of the important vendors in the space, those language models run inside Snowflake. So customers and our vendor partners can leverage that to build AI intelligence on top of their interesting data and into their interesting applications. And so you can have AI-ready data products and AI-ready analytical applications that are available in Snowflake as well. And you're gonna see a fantastic example here in a second.
Thank you, Sully. Yeah, keep the questions coming. Thank you guys in the chat. We'll definitely get to them in the Q&A, so keep them coming. This is great. And yeah, to kind of pull the threads together from, the Snowflake data and platform side, this is the ecosystem that we have seen work, and we've definitely think it's a great opportunity to have that everything in that one architecture, right? To have everything living on your cloud in Snowflake, having everything in that one centralized location. CARTO is really excited. We're launching a Snowflake native app as well. So if you need that extra protection under your firewall, there's also a software as a service option, or SaaS. But being able to have everything live in that architecture, follow those data governance policies and strict requirements for ITs, that's also very important to us. And wanting to have everything connect via APIs, nothing's duplicated, replicated, things like that, and having all those different pipelines of unstructured data and structured data being able to commingle and work together, and having amazing data partners like Cotality live within Snowflake as well. A part of the CARTO marketplace, you're able to get that data delivered straight to Snowflake. So you can have it live with amongst your other additional valuable context variables and data sets with your first party data. And just what we talked about earlier too is those additional geospatial capabilities, expanding, the statistics, the ML models, and the things that you're already working on, and giving them that extra boost. So yeah, let's dive in and see it all in action. So today what I'll be doing is I'll be showcasing 2 of the data sets from Cotality, basing off of a lot of the great content and information Anand has shared. We're going to talk about the growth intelligence. So taking a look at those early signals of construction growth before growth, happens in population. And also taking a look at spatial record, which can be really helpful for de-risking investments. So we're going to dive into 2 examples of both, and we'll be able to dig right in. So if you have any questions or comments, definitely add them to the chat. So the first one, let's dig into imagine spotting that growth corridor before construction begins. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and share my screen, and we can dig into this example right here. So give me a moment. Perfect. Okay, so you should be able to see my screen. So we're looking at data living within Snowflake and on the CARTO interface. So essentially, let's imagine that you shared this to a few decision makers in your organization, your team. You created this dashboard, and the goal is to identify expansion opportunities before they happen, right? So what we have here is CARTO's AI agent capability here. So you could ask questions of the data, be able to have these prompts that get into insights early. So one potential question could be, where are potential growth areas for expanding commercial sites and services, right? So maybe if you're a telco, you want to understand areas where construction's happening early, or you might be a retailer, you might want to understand where construction might be later in the life cycle. So what we have here, right, is taking a look at expansion areas from light to dark. So dark is a higher score. And what we'll do is we'll first take a look at something that I think is really illustrative in terms of the power of Cotality's construction growth data versus using traditional population metrics. So if I navigate here, what I did was I leveraged SQL parameters. So from using the Snowflake data table to create a score between, leveraging population insights versus the construction growth score that Cotality provides. So I'm going to switch to this layer here. So if I wanted to, let's say, over-index a bit more on population and not take a look at construction growth, so we can change that index score. Right now it's querying down to Snowflake and adjusting the parameters for this end score. We could see here the opportunities indexing on growth are definitely a lot less than what we saw before, right? So we can see here population centers are going to be a bit more urban, right? So if we're looking at where population lives and opportunities where population currently exists, there's certainly some in Austin. I'm based in Austin, so very familiar with this area, with some in San Antonio. But if we change the parameters to growth score, where we're taking a look at construction, those early signs, maybe land use is changing, and other indicators really early on before population grows, we could see all of these corridors and opportunities that are happening before population's moving in. So I think this is really illustrative in terms of the opportunities, being able to catch those early before population moves in. So that's definitely something to consider in terms of Cotality's growth data, right? And we're looking at construction growth and that life cycle. So for example, and it's a combination score of various attributes. So in terms of land use change, right, that could be something that is a really early signal, and being able to catch that early versus, construction starting on the property. And that could be a later part of the construction cycle. So being able to compile all those different variables into a score, lower being it's earlier in the cycle or forecasted to have lower probability that may happen because it's so early in the cycle, versus having a higher number of the growth score, meaning there is higher confidence that and forecasted that growth will happen because it's in later stages. And based on historical models and various insights, Cotality's growth score will then kind of present that region by region. And so, for example, if we wanted to take a look at where those commercial sites may be, definitely let's go ahead and filter for commercial locations in particular. Imagine that you're looking for properties that are zoned for zoned for commercial use. So let me filter for that. And then we might want to take a look at land use indicators where land use is really early on in the process. So I can go ahead and zoom in early. Let me change to this layer here. So now we can zoom into Round Rock right here. So leveraging this capability of a bird's eye view, we could take a look at that. And now we could take a look at some actual properties that are zoned right here. So we could see there's a lot of opportunities. The lighter color are earlier in the construction cycle with the lower growth score. And then the darker blues are parcel and property locations with higher growth score. So let's imagine that perhaps you're a retailer, you want to take a look at opportunities later in the cycle with a higher growth score. We could go ahead and filter for that. And we could see here now we're honing in on specific properties and locations that have a land use change indicator that is happening, and then also commercial opportunities that are available as well. So if I could click on that, then on the right-hand side, you could see various indicators of where it is in the process of the life cycle, and also, the growth score for it to become more developed. So this could be an insight to then take and identify, okay, is that an area for a potential site, and be able to find those opportunities early on. We could also hone into these specific locations further and continue our analysis. So it's certainly very powerful to be able to identify these early signals early. So being able to have a higher view of where those opportunities exist, as well as granular insights at the property level where that lives. And then switching back to where we are here. Give me one moment. So certainly the takeaway here is to have that first mover's advantage, to take a look at those properties and those insights, those early signals of land use change, and then also where they are in that construction growth process, and to be able to have those insights to catch those spots early before population growth occurs. So you could certainly catch things years before they may be happening or moving in. So the next example, using another fabulous Cotality data set in the Snowflake ecosystem, is forecasting risks early to safeguard those investments and protect those expansion decisions. So what I'll show you is CARTO's workflows capabilities. So being able to do the analysis behind the scenes and then also the visualization. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. This one. So as you could see here, essentially what I have is a canvas connected to Snowflake. So you're able to connect to your first-party data sets, drag and drop those in, pull Cotality in for the data observatory or other data sets of value. And then also I pulled in a flood table, but what you could also do is call in data sets via API. So there are a few components, HTTP requests, where you could have essentially this workflow automated and timed on a schedule. Oh, oops, it's refreshing, where you can have it timed on a schedule and be able to have live insights visualized on the map. So from the left, we have our data inputs here pulled from your Snowflake environment. And then we have, tables saved back into the Snowflake environment after some transformation, some joins, and then also an automated ability to create a visualization from it. So this, essentially brings the power of automation and scalability, where you're able to get those live real insights into your map visualizations for decisions, and being able to schedule that that, it's kind of a rinse and repeat. You go on vacation, and you're able to not worry because it'll be taken care of, and you'll also have those actual insights for the business as well, so that your time can be put into additional very strategic and important analyses as well. So that can be super impactful. And so what we could do is now take a look at the map that's generated here. Let me pull that up. So that workflow generated, and after some additions, created a map like this. Same like with the other map, you're able to have a conversation with the AI agent. And for here, I think the differentiator here too is, right, we have flood data enriched with property data here. And when it comes to identifying risks, right, you want to be able to understand which properties might have certain risks early on. And of course, floodplain is definitely an area where we could call out those risks, but I think Cotality definitely offers a huge advantage in terms of additional details around the building materials themselves, right? So if you have a certain type of roofing, that's also going to impact the types of claims, or predicting what claims may come in what areas based on the different weather events that are happening. So here on the right-hand side, we're taking a look at average annual loss for the properties in this area of Miami, Florida, and also the different type of flood risk we have here, as well as flood cover and the property type. So let's say we want to take a look at commercial locations. We can just go ahead and filter for those commercial areas. That. And we can see here now it's filtered for commercial areas across Miami, Florida. And we can see here there's different types of floodplain risks here. And if we go to this area in particular here, let's say we want to also consider the type of roof cover within this risk analysis. So if I choose wood, shingles, and shake, these are roof coverings or materials that could definitely become more of a risk, and you would expect more claims coming from these areas if there's a flooding or hailstorm or tropical storm and things like that. And if we hone in a bit deeper, now we can get even further insights that even though these properties might be across different floodplains, this is something that could be missed in more traditional analysis, because these properties with the materials and the building materials that are available to them, there definitely could be claims and risks with those properties. So if you're considering purchasing that area, maybe there's some mitigation in terms of change of the roof. That could definitely be a cost savings in the future, or for insurance at least, that could be definitely an area that could be claims could be coming in the future where traditional analysis could be missing it. So we could see here, and then on the right-hand side, we could get more information. We could hone in onto specific properties if there's of interest. We can navigate. You can navigate back here and filter based on flood risk. So if you filter for high flood risk, now we have narrowed down some properties in this area that if they're part of your expansion plan or they're part of your portfolio, now you have additional information to understand those risks and make those decisions. So those were two examples that we walked through together of taking a look at how that ecosystem plays together and the actual insights you could get from Cotality's data, as well as leveraging CARTO for those actual business insights. And before we jump to Q&A, I wanted to flag a few things in terms of what's coming next month. I did hint at them, but really excited for full Snowflake integration and additional AI capabilities to be able to have conversations with the map. We weren't able to go through it today, but definitely there's a lot more coming, really exciting capabilities. So really excited to walk through that in the future. So keep your eyes on that. In terms of events coming up, this week we have the Snowflake World Tour. There'll definitely be CARTO and Snowflake folks there. So if you're in the New York City area, definitely chime in and stop by. I think that would be a really great event to go to. And then also CARTO and Cotality and also Snowflake will be at the Spatial Data Science Conference, also in New York City. So if you're there, we would love to see you there. If you're really interested in all things what we're talking about today and want to explore a bit more about kind of your situation or what you're working on, would love to have a conversation if you're able to make it there or to follow up with this webinar. And to dive in, definitely the first step will be to access a free trial of CARTO. You're able to access some sample data sets from Cotality there and get set up with a Snowflake connection. If you already have a Snowflake connection, you can get that set up or start a free trial with Snowflake. And then reach out to us if you want to learn more about Cotality's data packages that Anna talked about today, because they have a lot of really valuable data sets across a lot of different areas. So happy to get in touch, and definitely yeah, I think this is a great approach to apply it with your data. Take a look at what that could look like. So all right, Q&A, we made it. So thank you so much for listening in, and thanks for tuning in. We're really excited to answer your questions and dig in. So I do see that there's some questions in the chat. So let me take a quick look. Yeah, so I see a question from Robbie. He's interested in learning more about the use of AI in data centers analysis. Could you provide some more info? So it sounds like, Robbie, you're interested in understanding how to identify data centers. Is that correct?
If I can address a part of that, as I was speaking from a Cotality standpoint, back to Property 360 and the different kinds of insights that we can glean from the data sets around property and location. What we have seen for data centers, there is high applicability of some of those insights that we have seen through our partners. I'll name a few that have been most commonly used. One is, of course, all things around understanding the property and the location thereof on the probable sites that are being screened for data center. The second big one usually comes down to availability of energy and utilities, whether these are transmission lines, power stations, substations, fiber optic lines, and things of that nature, given how hungry these data centers are. Third, we have seen what we call as resiliency. You saw different kinds of risks, and you saw flood as an example in Eva's demo, but you could really apply in that site screening other potential risks around hazard, around weather, around climate that can be posed to some of those sites being considered, again, all the way from flood to earthquake to hurricanes to storms, even projecting out in the future as well, and understanding the financial losses that could come with it. The fourth one is around proximity. So whether it could be proximity to a water body or proximity to other things of interest, to roadways, to railroads, or anything of that nature, which is all about that particular site. Those are, and then of course, the valuation of the lands, the valuation of the parcel structures, and what have you as well. So again, from a Cotality standpoint, where my answer lies, it's all about using the breadth and depth of property and location data, identifying the right insights, and then using that to your advantage, using particular geospatial analytics, whether you're doing it in platform and visualizing it with CARTO and processing it through Snowflake, combining it with some of your own data. But as we think about the data center analysis, those are some of the top patterns that we have seen emerging from a data standpoint.
Yeah, that's great. That's super helpful. Yeah, I hope that's helpful, Robbie. And yeah, if you have follow-up questions, definitely happy to share our emails and you can follow up with us. Another question I see in the chat is a key challenge we face is harmonizing data sets with ground truth conditions. This often requires extensive validation and editing before integration into our intake pipelines. How can geospatial AI be applied to accelerate data harmonization and validation so that infrastructure project implementation can pace with fast-moving schedules? I'm curious, Anand or Sully, from your experience, if you have any ideas or thoughts or suggestions.
I have to admit, I do not at this point. I don't know that I've seen geospatial be used to help on the harmonization side. I mean, there's certainly a lot of quality monitoring and measurement tools that are entering the platform to help with quality management, generally speaking. It feels like there might be something there with geospatial, but I haven't seen that.
Yeah, from my opinion, I think when it comes to the ground truth conditions and the harmonization, it comes down to two things for us. One is the corroboration, any kind of insights that we try to glean from the data. Um, if it's generally based on just one signal, it's going to have a lesser confidence compared to whether it's corroborated amongst other signals as well. So there are many cases where we would source the data from one source, but also corroborate it with, can we verify that through aerial imagery extraction, for example? Can we verify that through other things that are happening in the area? So usually the corroboration. And then the second thing that geospatial AI helps quite a lot is going to be about removing the bias, because a lot of these data sets that are not based on factual things, that are not ground truth, they all come with their kind of bias. But understanding how different things evolve and emerge in different areas, and I'll say that with an example, because we spoke about some of the early signals today in this webinar. We have seen in different geographical areas, for example, different builders may operate in different velocities or different pace in how they go from acquiring lands to selecting sites to building on those sites to filing permits and moving on the construction life cycle. So there are hidden historical trends that give path to either what has happened in the prior history or the biases that operate within the data. So we have seen a large part of when we start to apply geospatial and AI models to understand these historical trends, they start to make their way into what could be the actual ground truth as well as we start to make predictions of the future. So to summarize, I think Catherine, who asked this question, one is around corroboration amongst multiple signals. The second is about understanding the historical patterns that can help remove the biases and give way to actual insights that we all care about.
Yeah, I think that's great. That's super, super helpful. And yeah, I think there's a lot of evolving insights there. So yeah, thank you for sharing. And I see we have another question of where can I learn more about CARTO and Snowflake's ML capabilities? One thing that's a really great question we weren't able to get into today. There's a really great blog post that CARTO and Snowflake have written. Let me share my screen. In terms of that workflow tool that we took a look at earlier. I'm going to reshare my different tab. So something we didn't get into today, but for the workflows tools that we took a look at earlier, there's the ability to integrate Snowflake machine learning. So being able to create forecast models with your data or additional data sets. So definitely leveraging Cotality's data sets and their models that they have in their data sets. But if you do need the flexibility to, create those models in your Snowflake environment and predict, you certainly can do that within the tooling that we took a look at earlier today. So that's a really great way to learn more about that. I think that's a great resource to dig into. I'll go back to sharing the screen. Let's see what other questions we have. I'm afraid, let's see, the data is a snapshot of a given moment updated once a month. That means that it will depend on the time of day, busy hour or not, and how many other factors that could lead to wrong signals to the decision makers. Are there any plans to get real time data so the feedback of data is more accurate? So I definitely can start responding, and maybe I'll pass it to you, Anand and Sully on the question. Certainly, I think in terms of, gathering real-time or near real-time data, I think there's a lot of really great, even open source options if you need to have access to hurricane models, a lot of things that are shared via REST APIs or URL. So being able to pull that into CARTO workflows is something that a lot of customers find a lot of value in, especially in the insurance space, to identify those risks. And I do know on the data warehouse slide, there's the ability to have those pipelines update. So especially if, let's say you're a logistics company and you want those, mobility patterns and things like that, you can have those live updates within your Snowflake environment to update and have those updates visualized also on the map as well. So there's the ability to adjust within the map how frequently you check back to your Snowflake environment. So if you have constantly changing data, that's something that could be updated and refreshed in the map. So to your point, when data gets stale or old, sometimes those visualizations are out of date. So that's definitely some capabilities that's possible to get those near real-time or real-time insights. And I think that's kind of the areas that are helpful on the CARTO side. But yeah, from Sully or Anand, anything else to add to that question?
Yeah, I'll add one thing, which is I'll just highlight a Snowflake architectural feature. When we enable this sharing capability across organizations, a data sharing capability, whether that's two parties that have a relationship or a third-party data provider that has a relationship with many organizations. Once again, unlike other environments, I'll say typical traditional environments where you're copying data from one location to another, that's not happening in the way that Snowflake does data sharing. You're getting a view into the single copy of data that exists in the environment, in the Snowflake environment broadly. So to the extent you're a third-party data provider or your partner updates that data set multiple times per day, or quote unquote intraday, or in near real time, or overnight, or weekly or monthly, I guess, in a worst case scenario. But whatever freshness they make that data, your view of it is as current as it is. So there's no lagging like there is in, I'll say, traditional environments. And we do have a number of third-party data providers that provide quote unquote really fresh data. And so you can go in the marketplace and find those that are, there's some that are intraday. And certainly we have partners that do data sharing just one-to-one. And they get to define their relationship and how fresh that data needs to be. So that's just sort of a Snowflake architectural thing.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely. Great
both
point.
made the right points. I'll just add one thing. I don't think it's either or. I think it's an and, because from a data perspective, it really comes down to the nature of the use case, because every use case is going to require different kinds of data sets. Some are going to be more stable ground truth data. Some are going to require more real time. Obviously, both Eva and Sully spoke about there is certainly not a limitation in terms of being able to process the data, being able to visualize the data. You can set up, from a Cotality standpoint, we refresh a number of our data sets very frequently as well, some live on a real-time basis. From a CARTO standpoint, you can obviously set up your workflows at the right cadence depending on the use case. And Sully spoke about there is obviously no time lag, because the way the data sharing works, you can go all the way from source of the data, for example, Cotality in this case, all the way to your analytics for decision making. So I think it comes together nicely at the end.
Yeah, well said.
Fantastic. Absolutely. So I know we're at time. I'll take one more question since there was a few with the same topic in terms of how the CARTO AI agent works. So I wasn't able to show exactly how it works because I was getting some errors right before this webinar, so I wasn't able to do that. But yes, to answer your question, Yang, it would replace the manual configuration as I was going through and filtering, essentially being able to chat with the agent and being able to say where the identify areas for commercial expansion, and being able to zoom into the map, filter on the right hand side and things like that. So definitely the live demo effect is working this morning, but I'll definitely share a visual or recording of it in a follow-up email just so that you guys are able to see what that looks like. So that's what that interaction typically looks like. And there's a lot more coming soon in terms of being able to do even more than what's on an app. I can't share any updates too soon, but definitely keep your eye. There's more expanded capabilities beyond just filtering filters on the map. So really excited about what's to come soon. Great. So I know we're at time. Well, thank you so much for everyone's time and being here. Really excited for the opportunity to have this conversation, and great panel of experts here that really have a lot of experience and expertise, a lot of really great valuable solutions in terms of those challenges that we talked about, right? And being able to have that market advantage and that competitive advantage to make decisions and catch those early signals of risks, those early signals for expansion opportunities, and to be able to make those actionable decisions with near real-time and real-time data. So thank you for being here, everyone, and have a wonderful day. And we'll, in terms of next steps, we'll send a follow-up email from the CARTO side with more questions, a follow-up email with the slide information as well, a recording. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out here. Our emails would love to be in touch and further this conversation and talk about your data, your use cases, and how we can help.